the voice of America's team. Brad Sham joins us every Monday at this time on the Diamond Factory Hotline. Brad, who was your player of the game?
That's a good one because there was so much mediocrity in the first half, and then there was kind of a lot of wealth to share in the second half. It's one of those games, Sean, that I think it really turned on a couple of plays. So I would probably say Trayvon Diggs because I thought he changed the game with that interception.
Why didn't they? Aren't they supposed to review turnovers?
I thought they looked at it.
All right, on TV, no offense, but on TV.
I know you don't listen to our broadcast. That's okay.
Come on. On TV, they were saying, they're not even going to take this tour. You know I don't like Jim Nantz now, but they weren't.
After last week,
they weren't.
Right.
They were like, but they're not even going to take this to a review. That's what I thought they said on television. I was pretty stunned over that. Did you think it was a clean pick?
Well, you always have to look to see when it's at that angle. A lot of his interceptions involve getting your hands up underneath the football, and so especially from our angle live, it really was something we knew they would have to look at again. But the first replay we saw, Babe and I both said, that's a catch. There's nothing to see here. Go along, citizens.
So their process, though, is that, regardless of whether it's a formal review where the official on the field goes to the monitor, someone will look at it regardless.
Yeah, yes, and I think Sean did ask me that. You are both correct, which I don't know how often that happens, but here we are. You're both correct. It's automatic. Any scoring play or any change of possession is automatically reviewed.
Can you take us through Sam Williams' rookie year so far? Just watching him at practice, stuff you've been hearing behind the scenes. Not a guy we talk about every single week, but I think we should this morning. What have you seen or heard about Sam so far this season?
I think the biggest they knew what the physical ability was. That's why they drafted him in the second round. They knew he was really explosive. There were some questions about his maturity. And I think that from preseason games, if you look back, he had a couple of 15-yard penalties. And, even yesterday, when he picked the running back up and dropped him in what seemed like an obvious penalty situation, and they didn't call. I was more surprised by that than by the Diggs thing, that they didn't call that. But nonetheless, he has played in games with more maturity. And the part of practice that would be important for us to see to corroborate that, we don't get to see. But when you talk to people who are there, they say, he is clearly growing. So I think that the physical skills, the explosiveness, he's got a real high football IQ. He is in the right place more often than not, and when he's not, he seems to be a really quick learner. And I think he also has, Dan Quinn's a pretty good teacher. I think we've established that. But the biggest thing about him, I think, is that, and he said this, I talked to him after the game, he said this himself, the game is beginning to slow down for him a little bit. So when that happens, they don't have to think. It's so funny that you always talk about, and it doesn't really matter the sport. We want smart players, but we don't want them to think. And what that means, I think, is that they want them to have the ability to understand and learn, but then when it comes time for the speed of the game, you don't have time to stop and think about it. And any sport, I believe, would tell you this. You have to have that learning so deeply embedded, burned into your hard drive that you can now just react. And that's what the game slowing down means for him. There was some talk, especially during training camp, that he might be a little weak in run defense, and that came from some people who had seen him in the SEC. And that might have been true for the first couple of times he was out, especially in preseason. But I remember a few plays, and he hasn't, as you said, just not yesterday, he hasn't played that many snaps. But he's a pretty good run defender, and he gets to where he's going real fast. And then he's very, very strong. And the more games he has like that, the more plays he makes, then the more confidence he'll get. it's another anomaly to me. We think of all professional athletes as being confident. That's why they're there. They're the best of their group.
Yeah.
But when they get to the professional level, everybody's good. And suddenly they're playing with a whole bunch of guys who are as good or better than them. And so they really have to have a lot of confidence. His grows every time he has opportunities to make plays like that, and does. And so I don't think he's even scratched the surface. And the next few years should be really interesting. But he was definitely impactful. He got noticed yesterday.
Brad Sham here on 105 through the Fan via the Diamond Factory hotline. Were there some boos at halftime, down 6-3?
Sure. It's a Cowboys crowd. Of course there were.
Do you not think the boos were justified?
I think it might have been a little premature.
Okay.
I mean, I think they didn't play well, that's for sure. I believe you'll find me, if you go back and listen to it, I believe you'll find me having said that their play on third down was somewhere south of atrocious. But can we have just enough patience to get through a half? I mean, let's see. When McCarthy last week, Sean, was talking about timing and mechanics and that kind of thing, that what we were seeing was what he talked about. You cannot simulate playing any position, but especially quarterback, with the decisions you have to make at the speed you have to make them, with everything that's flying at you. You can't make those. You can't get that practice except in a game. You can't do it in practice. It has to be in a game. So I saw a couple of your tweets later. I thought you might have been a little harsh, but not that much. I mean, I'm willing to cut the guy some slack if you think about Prescott. I'm talking about.
Sure.
Now. I mean, he had not played. It wasn't just that he hadn't played in a month. I mean, he played 3 quarters and poorly then since the season started. So you have to go back to last year when he's playing in a game, and that it is not advocating for playing him in preseason. I do think that is foolhardy, the way the rules are. But I mean, it just means you're going to have to be a little patient. Fans don't want to be patient, so they missed a few opportunities in the first half. And I will not, until I go back and look at some of the tape, I won't know how I feel about what I think was called. Remember, he can change what's called based on what he sees. So, I mean, he clearly wasn't great, but you'd have to admit that he got better in the second half. And I'd be very disappointed if he didn't play well next week and continue to get better every week. So booing that is, to me, typical of the fans at Cowboy games, and it wasn't widespread, but as you said, did I hear that? Yep, you heard it, and I thought that was a little premature.
Would you have a grade for his game?
Just gut feeling, RJ, I would say you could give him a B-. He didn't throw an interception. Mm-hmm. He probably threw a couple of balls. And if you said, I'm giving him a C+ because there were those 2 or 3 that went into contested areas, all right, I wouldn't fight you on that. But certainly he's fortunate, as Cooper Rush was, that he's got a defense that's playing like it's playing. And so you can play to that. And hopefully they've all learned from the wisdom of that, because the time will come this season when he is going to have to be dynamic. Right. He is going to have to make some plays. I would just encourage people to look at how the team that he came back into, the offensive team, is different from what it was the day he got hurt. That's a big growth area, this playing together, young guys who had never played, getting Gallup back, and Gallup is still getting his I'm really all the way there sea legs. Now, sometime after the bye, they'll re-inject James Washington into that mix, and I just think that the offense will continue to improve. It will absolutely not be at the rate that anyone listening to us wants to see it, but it will continue to improve. And at some point down the stretch, or if they're fortunate enough to make the postseason, which I think there's reason to hope for, he's going to have to accelerate. He's going to have to make some plays. He's going to have to be the reason they win. But on the road to that, in the next 10 weeks or however many it is, let all of them, him, coaches, everybody learn the lesson. You've got a good defense. Play to the defense. Run the ball. Play to the defense. Don't be foolhardy. Don't try to hit a 6-run homer because it's not necessary. And then I believe that by the time they need it, that he will be in a position to make some of the plays. And it'll probably happen sooner than that, actually. But he'll be in a position to make some of the plays that you're paying him for.
I wanted to focus on a specific aspect of the game. Like, the Cowboys win, they're 5-2. That's freaking awesome, and I'm stoked about that. That doesn't mean, though, that we can't look at a couple aspects that you're like, I still wish that this part was a little bit better. Now, before the game, Mike McCarthy said the goal is for the whole offense to be better. Fair enough. Now, I think like anything in the league, you get what you emphasize. That is why we've been emphasizing third down. Now, he went on to say, it's like, we also pay attention to first and second down because we don't want to find ourselves in bad third down situations, which makes sense. But he said, we're emphasizing third down. Going into the game, the Cowboys converted on 32.1% of their third downs.
Is that good?
No,
All right.
That is not good. That was 29th in the league.
But in the last 3 games, they've converted 35.29%.
That is still not great.
All right.
And you would like to see that be better.
Better than the Yankees putting the ball in play in a championship series.
That is an excellent point.
We're better than Green Bay in this game, though.
That, you know what?
How many did Green Bay convert this week?
I'm not looking at the number, but my feeling would be 0. It cannot really be 0.
They converted 0% of their third downs this week against
Jordan
Washington.
Love time.
Yeah.
There you go. Actually, I do have a question about that at some point.
When Aaron Rodgers said maybe this is what's best for us, do you think he was thinking a new quarterback for Green Bay is what's best for them?
Yeah.
And this gets us in that direction.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, for the Cowboys yesterday, here's the part that is still concerning to me, is they were 3 for 9 on third downs yesterday.
That's not good.
No. So that's like slightly bit better than 32.1% because you're sitting at right at 33.3%. But it's still not good. And perhaps more concerning than any of that is the Cowboys did not convert on 3rd and 2 or less 4 times. That's never going to cut it.
Zeke was 100%, they said, at converting third downs. Third and one situations.
Yeah.
And he was not able to do it much yesterday.
Did it bother you that I know it's not all the plays. In my mind, it was all the plays just because of the ones that didn't work, that they decided to kick the ball so far out to the edge on those short yardage situations?
Yeah, and I'm guessing they're thinking that Hutchinson or whatever edge they were going to attack was the best approach there. That guy is undisciplined and likes to pursue in and gets a little too far. But it didn't work out because the linebackers were really prepared yesterday to go up against the Cowboys offense. So, yeah, that just didn't work out.
And then Hutchinson did single-handedly blow up that other third down with his sweet spin move on Terrence Steele. I got nervous for a second when Steele gave up that sack and also had another false start penalty. I was like, oh no, This is about to be the Tampa Bay game all over again. I did not think it was. Maybe yesterday was not the most shining example for our offensive line.
Our tackles weren't great yesterday.
Yeah.
Our interior was actually a lot better than our tackles, which has been kind of the opposite for
They'll
us.
look better this upcoming week. I know that.
Yeah.
You're not a big fan of the Bears?
They get to play like a JV team.
I mean, and I already saw, I thought, was it like 10 and a half points that they're favored going into this game?
Well, I have first pick this week. I guarantee you I'm picking the Cowboys unless it gets up to 19 and a half.
What?
If it goes to 19 and a half, I'll be worried about picking the Cowboys.
Okay. All right. Well, something to look forward to on that part. And we might actually get a Betting with Bassick update in just 1 second. But this is concerning to me, and I know it goes back to how people decide to divvy up the blame and the credit sometimes fascinates me. But there was a lot of, at least on social media, shade going in the direction of Kellen Moore, especially on some of these third down plays. And then it still flummoxes me that if you're going to bring in Turpin, you immediately run the reverse play for him instead of letting him sit there for a second when everybody knows that, like, hey, I bet they're going to run a reverse with him.
Yeah, and I do wonder if the Cowboys had this philosophy with Cooper Rush of, running the ball so frequently, and that's going to evolve at some point, Kevin, I believe, which I think will put you in better short down situations, maybe on second down. I mean, like, that's the hope, is that you're not in. I mean, look at the first drive. First play of the game, what do? Roll out that was a failure. I don't care who you want to blame. I said that it was a missed throw by Dak, and I feel like that play specifically is an easy pitch and catch, and it was too high for Noah Brown. I know it hit him in the hands, but that doesn't mean that it was an easy pitch and catch there. Okay,
is that a perfect example of, depending on what side you are, that's how you interpret it?
And that's what my Twitter got feedback on. That play, missing that throw or not catching that pass, whatever you want to say, that failed the whole series.
Right.
Because then the next play, they run the ball. And then you're in a 3rd and 8 situation immediately, and now Dak's so you were off schedule. Like that, you were not on time the way you were supposed to be. So I'm hoping that the ability to kind of, as Dak grows back into the position this year, that you're able to pick up bigger yards and bigger chunk plays on other downs than your typical, hey, we're running on first or we're running on second. Maybe we got a play action here. We don't know. And then, third down, let's just get first down. Hopefully. And you could see it, Kevin. I think it was, you could see that the yards per throw, the air yards, were superior to what you've been working with Cooper Rush. You're pushing the ball downfield more, which means the defense is going to be a little more spread out, which means on each individual play, each individual series, you should have a little more space to work with when you have Dak out there. Now, he's got to complete those passes, though.
I agree.
Otherwise, that's not going to work.
I agree. And then, what I kind of wish would happen on some of these is I wish the Cowboys would make a decision on some of these things before third down. Because I feel like too often the Cowboys judge things in a vacuum after the success or failure of their third down play, where not every time, because certainly sometimes, like if you get sacked, then you need to rethink your plan and everything. But sometimes, like when they kick it out to the edge on 3rd and 2, and you're like, why was that the play call? I wish, depending on where they are in the field, like let's say they're at midfield, give or take. You go into the third and 2, and you just relay real quick. You have 2 plays to get 2 yards. Instead, I feel like we're like, hey, let's kick it out to the far right side. Oh, we lost half a yard, or we just got back to the line of scrimmage or gained half a yard. Well, now we have to punt. Instead of going, hey, guys, you got 2 plays. We're going for it because we need to, depending on the game, the flow of the game. I realize there are situations where you would obviously just punt, but I wish there were more situations where they could kind of look at it on the whole and be like, you got 2 plays. Get me 2 effing yards. Now, whether or not we would always be successful, who the hell knows?
I love this text, Kevin, from the 469. Let's talk about how Pollard did all the work yesterday and Zeke just vultured his touchdown.
That's why I asked you. The touchdown pass that Dak threw.
Yeah.
It's nothing against Dak. Did you feel bad for Tony Pollard? Because he felt like he put in a lot of work yesterday. And they're like, hey, hell of a job. Here's your gold watch. We'll send you on your way.
Hey, we need to get Dak this touchdown. You'll have plenty of opportunities on another team to get a touchdown.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I did feel bad for him on that. But while there's lots of positives to take from this game, this is a spot where I hope that the Cowboys can find a way to be more effective. If it's just a matter of you do not think the offensive line is doing a good enough job blocking, I would certainly listen to that. If it's a matter of sometimes Zeke does not get the tough yardage the way he used to, I think I would listen to that as well. Or if it's a matter of you think Kellen Moore calls ridiculous plays that are not suited to the strengths of this offense, especially in third down and short yardage situations, I would be willing to listen to all that as well. But this feels like something that's going to catch up to you at some point. It's not going to be against the Bears. I would certainly concede that. But at some point, I think it's going to catch up to you.
I agree, but I don't think that this team is going to be doing – the offense is going to be the same by the end of the season. That's my argument towards that is – right now, with the way that they're playing football, it should. And that's what Choppy gets so like, hey, you shouldn't be playing this style of football. He's probably right. If you can play the Mahomes style of football, you can do that. It's going to keep you out of those types of situations more often than it's going to put you in them.
And then also,
then you're more of a threat on third down.
Sure.
Right? Like now they're like, oh,
Yes.
crap, we have to drop back in coverage because that quarterback's been eating us up all day.
Also, did you see and did you think it was hilarious when the ref got hit in the head with the football? Now
I didn't see it.
Oh my gosh! It wasn't on purpose because the dude immediately ran up. By the way, it like looked like he might get in trouble for trying to apologize because he ran up and like tried to put his hand on the ref's shoulder, like tell him, "Hey, sorry about that," while he's making a call. And another referee came swooping in, and it looked like he was like, "Hey, man, don't touch the official." And he was like, "Oh, I was just trying to apologize for throwing the football and hitting him in the head." I thought it was hilarious.
Did he do it on purpose?
I don't think he did it on purpose. I really don't. And then this is a great
You're
point.
going to call holding on my team. I'll just hit you in the head with a football.
I don't think that is how that played out, but who the hell knows?
I gave this stat in crosstalk. I'm going to come back around with it just in case a few of you haven't been listening nonstop for the last 3 hours plus. We go to Joe Marino here on Twitter. 14 NFL teams are currently averaging one or fewer passing touchdowns per game. Shockingly low. Yesterday, Dak had one. I know. The average for the NFL over the last 10 years has been 4. Just 4 teams. It's been either 3, 4, or 5 almost every year for the last decade as far as teams that were so bad with the passing game that they could only get 1 touchdown passing or less per game. Used to be rare. Out of a 32-team league, only 4 on average couldn't throw more than 1 per game. And now we're at 14. So what's that tell you? It's more difficult than ever to throw in the NFL. They see where all the trends have gone. And I think the defenses were in denial. Like, oh, we got to commit to stopping the run. Now they're like, let them run. And the result is more defenders on more plays. It's very difficult to get a favorable matchup. And in the 2 games that Dak has played, it doesn't matter that the defense is going for 4.5, 5.2 yards per carry. They're not coming up. And that's why they can be running that well, and Dak drops back to pass, and he's like, crap, where do I go with it? And then you see him throw it. It's like, man, there were 2 or 3 guys in that picture when the ball arrived. That's his best option, you know? You know how a turnover averse Dak is? Do you think he's throwing into triple coverage while he has man on the other side? The answer to that is no. The reason is there are so many players within a close proximity that as soon as he sets his feet and looks in a direction, you have help coming into that area. And I don't think there's an answer for it right now as the game exists. I think this is going to be a competition committee adjustment as far as what is illegal defense in basketball, what is the shift in baseball. There's all sorts of different rules that govern how much personnel you can send to one part of a sporting surface or another. And I don't know, maybe the coaches will surprise me and they'll come up with the answer for this, but I think the competition committee is going to take a good look before too long and say, guys, we can't double everybody in the secondary. This is ridiculous. We're a game about big plays, and we need to have a certain amount of guys, within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. I don't even know how you legislate that perfectly. It's going to be a big challenge for them. But all that being said, Dak did put up a 113 passer rating, which I think is a continuation of the theme of him being very efficient, and that has been his career for the majority of the time. Although they were 3 of 9 on third down. And it's now 3 games in a row where you're sitting there at halftime going like, holy crap, where is our offense? So I'm not trying to, blow smoke, but I'm just trying to provide as much context as possible because you can't evaluate Dak by what he's done or what Tony Romo did. You have to evaluate now compared to peers. And his peers being some pretty dang good quarterbacks who are having a horrible time trying to figure out what it takes to have a good passing game. Andy Reid, I think, is the best and most experienced offensive coach in the NFL. And it took him like 10 games last year. Now he and Mahomes and Kelsey are like, all right, we got it. Josh Allen and the Bills, very brilliant offensive coordinator, great quarterback, loaded offense, Stephon Diggs. It appears they got to figure it out, but they're not hanging 40 a game. Like Tony said, this is going to be a 24-20 type of game. Even the top quarterbacks going nose to nose, both under 25 points. I think that's very important context. But the truckwreck.com fan text is open. And gentlemen, you have the floor.
I think teams have figured out how to play 11 personnel.
Absolutely.
I think that's the thing. I think there's so much spread offense in college football that it's giving you ideas of how to attack people that play 11 personnel. And what they're saying is like, okay, fine, you can play with your 3 wide receivers. We're just going to drop 7. We're going to drop 8. And you can see if you can run routes. And you look at the teams like Buffalo and Kansas City, what are their big plays? Crossing routes, underneath routes, tight end based routes. Dawson Knox, what they're doing at Kansas City, at Buffalo. These guys have figured out how to, those guys, Kansas City and Buffalo, I think have figured it out a little bit better than everybody else. But I think that we're starting to see that these defensive coordinators have a beat on how to play with 3 wide receivers on the field. And that's the problem that they're running into right now. It's like, fine, put as many of those guys out there as you want. We'll cover them. We'll make your quarterback have to read, and either your offensive line is going to break down with a holding call or we're going to get a sack. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah. That's happened, right? I mean, the offensive line play hasn't been great for the majority of teams in the league.
It's not great. There's probably 1 or 2 per every team. Look at the Cowboys. They've been one of the great offensive lines for years, and they're down now to playing a rookie left tackle who gives up pressure. I mean, if you want to be honest, Aiden Hutchinson, he had 3 sacks this year coming into the game. We talked to Dan Miller, their play-by-play guy, yesterday. He says all 3 of the sacks were in 1 half against Washington. And then all of a sudden he gets 2 against you, So, that's if you don't have offensive line play and you can't hold up, and these quarterbacks are having, it's taking them long to read. They're looking at Mahomes, guys like that. Mahomes is great at extending the plays.
Yeah.
That's what makes them so difficult to deal
Dak's
with.
pretty dang good at it from time to time as well.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You've got to be able to extend the play if you're going to beat some of these defenses.
Yeah, and Mahomes and Allen do that really, really well. Mahomes made a throw yesterday that was so disgustingly insane that it's hard to wrap your mind around it, and it's like, okay, that is just a special dude, and obviously he's paired with a great offensive mind in Andy Reid. But what Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes are able to do, I mean, Mahomes is rolling to his left, side arming, and there's like 6 defenders of the Niners that he bends. I don't know. He's defying all sorts of physics. You can't defend that. And so everybody else is having to play a little bit different of a game because they just aren't the alien quarterback that Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes are right now. And Dak is he's at a little bit of that crossroads a little bit when you laid out kind of the different options that you're on. It's definitely an evaluation period starting yesterday all the way up until, I guess, the end of next season. That's when the contract allows for you to really be able to make some decisions on what you want to do with Dak. I feel very comfortable with him, though, and I think especially with the way these quarterbacks are playing this year, you should feel confident that more often than not you're going to have the better quarterback on the field. I think the play that concerns me most after your breakdown, Broadus, is not even the triple coverage throw on 3rd and 20. To me, it's the seeing an open Noah Brown on 3rd and 2 and deciding that you're not trusting what you see or you don't feel confident to pull the trigger there. Those are the plays that probably concern me more, and I wonder how many other quarterbacks deal with that right now.
What's the common thread of this? 6-0 Eagles, 5-1 Buffalo, 5-2 Jets, 4-3 Baltimore, 5-1 Minnesota. Let's go 5-2 Kansas City. What's the common thread with all those teams? Is there something that you think about when I name those teams?
Good coaches?
Maybe take Minnesota out of it.
Mobile quarterbacks.
Mobile quarterbacks, yeah.
Mobile quarterbacks. Every one of those teams, it's like your division leaders.
You're going to have to buy time.
Yeah, you have to buy time. You have to, while teams are, what's going to happen is the more time you buy, the more likely you get defensive holding.
Yeah.
While the quarterback was in the pocket, holding.
Illegal contact downfield.
That's what you're doing. You're buying time in order to potentially make a play or get a penalty on the play.
We can't get to the quarterback. Like our only shot is a super fast edge rusher like Micah or Von Miller or something like that. And then QBs started getting rid of the ball under 3 seconds. Like 10 years ago, only 1 or 2 quarterbacks did, and now everybody does.
See, that's what Detroit did yesterday. That I think, Eric, did you lean over and say something to me like this looks, or it might have been Chris Arnold. I'm sorry, one of you two leaned over and said, "Hey, this game plan looks very similar to what the Commanders did. The screens, the running, the stuff like that." And then what happens then? All of a sudden, you don't get anything out of the screens and the runs and stuff like that, and you have to start throwing the ball. That plays right into Dallas's hand.
All right, so at 877-881-1053, where is Dak Prescott on that career arc? 254, Dak haters grade him on a play-by-play basis, and a couple bad throws will dictate their opinion. Then they watch SportsCenter and the highlights and think other quarterbacks don't throw bad balls. I think there's something to that. And I would challenge, everybody to go watch as much quarterback as you can and look at the scores that the other teams are putting up. And defenses have done a great job adjusting. You mentioned the 11 personnel, and 7 years ago, Sean Payton took over the NFL with running almost every play was 11 personnel, and it became very, very in vogue. Like, how do we counter this? There's nothing we can do. And I think their only answer was to let them run. We'll rally to the football, but we can't commit extra resources and let them make these big plays. They're carving us up.
I also want to include the Giants in that mix with the running quarterback, 6-1.
Yeah,
but you're right. I mean, that's the thing. I think that now when 11 personnel came in, it was like, God, you got to have a slot guy. You got to have this. You got to have that. And and then it turned into, well, everybody's real light on defense because they're having to rush the passer because because you weren't. I think corners are getting better in the league. I think teams. If you ask me, I think they're better corners and slot players in the league than there are offensive linemen.
Yeah.
For a team, teams might have 2 or 3 really good corners and maybe 1 or 2 only really good offensive linemen.
Indeed. 214, when Dak used his legs to move outside the pocket, he was decent at extending plays. Post-injury, Dak wants to be a pocket passer, and he's not good enough for that.
That's not true in a little bit because some of the best throws he made, that throw he made down the field to Lamb was a boot to the right, and he was able to extend the play, and then he got hit as he's throwing the ball. So some of his best plays are when he's actually throwing it on the move. But in the second half, he was 10 of 11, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
A lot of that was pocket passing stuff.
He was really good yesterday. I think what happened is the first quarter was atrocious, and at half you only had 3 points. So we really dug in on some opinions that were in the process of changing before we got to half.
Right.
And, did Dak play a great game? No, he didn't. But
the second half was much better, as we've mentioned. He had 136 pass rating. For me, I think a big thing for this is he good enough to get you over the hump and to be a Super Bowl caliber type of quarterback, right? And especially with this defense and this 2-headed stable of running backs, you kind of have the pieces in place here to where if you can be a guy that can just make a couple of plays in the game for you.
How about not turn over the ball?
Well, that's
huge.
how
they lost the Philadelphia game.
That's huge.
3 turnovers lost them that game.
But in the playoffs, you think you're probably going to play some teams where you're going to need your quarterback to make you a couple of plays.
And not turn over the ball.
Yeah. Not discrediting that.
Yeah.
But you're going to need your quarterback to step up and make some plays for you.
Maybe, but they also might be up 16-13. Like the Green Bay San Francisco game last year was super, super low. They held the Eagles for a long period of time before that one drive. They have one drive in the fourth quarter. They held the 49ers damn near scoreless in the second half last year. I think this defense is it, and we got to spend at least a segment talking about this defense at some point today. I think this defense is just so good that it will give you opportunities to win games even if the offense isn't doing anything.
Yeah, and that's the position that you've got yourself in. Of course, you're going to need your quarterback to make some big boy throws. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, I think even pretend that you wouldn't in a playoff, to go multiple games in the playoffs.
Yeah,
you're going to
Cooper Rush, and playing that way of just being extremely safe is probably not winning you much in the way of playoff games.
I get it.
Need
the Niners certainly they didn't score an offensive point, but Jimmy G did have that one big throw to Kittle to get him in position to make that field goal to win the game. You're still going to need your offense to come up with some big plays for you.
Well, you needed Cooper Rush to score so you can win those games.
Exactly. Yeah, you did. Yeah. But you wonder if in the postseason, and Dak didn't play well against San Francisco. So that's fresh in people's minds. So can he go ahead and put up And this seems like a team that will be in the playoffs. How does he perform when that time comes?
The other thing is he said after the game he doesn't want overconfidence to put the team in a bad position. I thought that was great leadership. He managed the game. He's not taking chances. And in the end, you win comfortably as a result. I really think their mindset is we're not going to go out and be aggressive with our play calling until the other team makes us.
Yeah.
And, if Dak's willing to accept that, there might be several more games coming, maybe even under 200 yards passing. And be a part of a winning formula.
And the schedule is going to allow for that.
Yeah.
And the good news is we're living in a world now, and we've discussed it plenty today, where the quarterback on the other side of the field is not dominating in a huge, gaudy numbers kind of way. You have the two in the AFC. It's Allen and Mahomes, and then everybody else outside of, I know Geno Smith has been doing some special things, but no one's really fully buying in on that in terms of playoff stuff. But you're not going up against a quarterback more than likely in these NFC playoffs that is just one of these monsters and putting up these crazy quarterback numbers. So again, I do feel confident that in the playoffs in the NFC, we'll see what happens with Rodgers and Brady, but for the most part, you're going to feel like you might have the best quarterback on the field throughout the playoffs.